This skyscraper could change Canada forever. When complete, the One will be the country's first ever supertall, setting a precedent for the future. And Toronto will be home to a beautiful new skyscraper. Initially predicted to cost more than $1 billion Canadian dollars, it'll offer 306 metres of condo, hotel and retail luxury. And if you fancy living here, then you better have pretty deep pockets. The lavish homes cost anywhere from $3 to more than $30 million. But what's a few million when you have the chance to live in Canada's tallest skyscraper? The One really is a record breaker. Well, I say is. It might be. On the prestigious corner of Yonge and Bloor, the One should have been a slam dunk for the city. Ground was broken in 2017 and it was expected to be a game changer not just for Toronto but for the whole of Canada. But if you take a stroll down this road today, you'll see it still looks a lot like a building site. What was sold as a 306-metre sanctuary in the clouds is currently an incomplete block of concrete and steel on the corner of one of Toronto's busiest intersections. And that's because the One's attempted climb to the top of Toronto's skyline has been very difficult. It's in a lot of debt, well behind schedule, and earlier this year the lead developer was given the boot from his own project. But this isn't just about saving the One from crisis, it's about securing the legacy of what was meant to be Canada's first supertall skyscraper. The corner of Yonge and Bloor is a key intersection in Toronto. It's a major hub in Midtown where two iconic Toronto streets meet. It's the ideal city living experience if you've got the cash. Full of penthouses, condos and glass facades, exclusivity really is the name of the game. You really couldn't pick a better location for a super tall condo complex like the One. And it's well on its way towards the skies above Toronto. Now standing at more than 250 metres, we can see how it's being constructed. Running on the outside, the horizontal and vertical frame of the structure is exposed on the facade, providing visual distinction from any buildings nearby. In its makeup, a series of ties climb up at regular intervals where the mechanical floors are found. 8 giant exterior pillars then support the tower from top to bottom and help provide additional open space inside. This frame hangs the floors by the distinctive diagonal beams, and every 6 levels there are 2 diagonal braces on each corner. Now, as with any project of this scale, the plans were tinkered with quite a bit before work on the One could begin, and it was largely because of the weather. All skyscrapers have to pass a wind test before being commissioned, and that's done using a model of the proposed building. Testing was carried out by performance engineers RWDI, and the results highlighted pretty intense wind pressures. As a result, it was decided that much stronger materials were needed, but that's not all. A very neat piece of kit called a tuned mass damper is going to be added at the top. It's basically a 600-ton pendulum, a bit like these. As the One sways in the wind, the pendulum swings to counteract that movement, halving the amount the tower moves by. Not all skyscrapers are quite so lucky. But that wind has to go somewhere. You can see here the cutaways in the mechanical floors. They help disrupt the flow of the wind, reducing the amount of pressure it places on the building and keeping people below from blowing over. A fairly important factor for any tower like this. As we can see, work is well and truly underway, but clearly there's some way to go before the One is ready for its glitzy inhabitants to move in. In fact, that landmark should have been hit way back in 2022. So what's the hold-up? Well, there are actually quite a few reasons, but before investigating why the One remains incomplete, it's worth winding back a bit and looking at its context in the wider city. It may be architecturally unique in Toronto, but it's just one piece of a much bigger jigsaw. You see, the city's in the midst of a construction purple patch. It has a, quite frankly, ridiculous number of cranes in operation at well over 200. That's 4 times anywhere else in North America. And while that's partially the mark of a growing destination, it's also indicative of a problem facing the whole country: a housing crisis. By 2030, it's thought Canada will need an extra 5 million homes. And Toronto isn't immune from that dynamic.
Are more people moving here or just more people moving to the city?
The population is rising by nearly 1% every year and housing just can't keep up. Previous zoning laws, known as the Yellow Belt, haven't helped either. They traditionally saw large sections of Toronto's residential areas reserved for detached and semi-detached single-family homes. That's not ideal for tackling an influx of people in need of affordable places to live. That's slowly changing, and you could now build 4 units per one plot in the Yellow Belt. But it isn't happening fast enough. Hence the upward climb of residential properties in the heart of Toronto where you can build tall, often in the form of condominiums like the One. But therein lies another problem: Canada's condo crash. Back in the late 1970s, Toronto experienced a boom of condo development that changed the face of the city forever, making it a high-rise metropolis. But in recent years, that condo momentum has been stuttering, with many of the towers no longer fit for purpose.
It turned out that most of these condos were actually built with investors in mind. That meant that they were small and they were basically bought to be rented out. So they became the de facto source of most of the rental stuff in the city for decades, actually. But because they were so small, they weren't the kinds of places that families would live or people would want to live permanently. So they've taken on a kind of temporary feel to them.
So it's safe to say the condo market isn't in great shape. As of early 2024, 60 of the towers are on hold in the city and various others have been cancelled.
You may have heard it's been a dismal period for condo sales across the GTA now.
In Canada's biggest cities, there's a ton of condos like this struggling to sell.
Developers are struggling with high interest rates, not to mention lofty inflation, and rent isn't meeting ownership costs. The One is no exception. This project is facing soaring debts climbing to $1.7 billion. And accrued debts like this are why some developers in the city have been going out of business. Mizrahi Developments isn't shutting down, but as of early 2024, its lead, Sam Mizrahi, is no longer managing the One's construction. It follows the appointment of Alvarez and Marcel as receiver to get the tower back on track. And besides the climbing debt, they reported that the relationship between Mr. Mizrahi and his partner on the One, Jenny Coco, had become acrimonious. Mr. Mizrahi and Alvarez and Marcel didn't respond to the B1M's request for comment. The One has been a hotbed of issues, and that means construction has well overrun its target date. Remember that 2022 completion aim? Well, by the 4th of October 2023, only 40 floors have been poured. But given its key location in the city, the money spent so far, and the plans to create more apartments in the upper levels, it'd be a surprise if the One isn't eventually completed. It's already partway there, and as we know, major skyscrapers are never left unfinished or unopened. But the delays could also cause more problems than debts and irritating tenants and investors. This should have been Canada's first supertall skyscraper, securing its legacy in the history books. But it may miss its moment under the spotlight because of this: the Sky Tower, the jewel of Toronto's latest major development, Pinnacle One. When they first started building, it was planned to stand 313 metres high. But the developers found that boring, so in 2022 they asked if they could increase the height. Approval was given, meaning it'll stand at more than 340 metres tall, and it's well on the way to those dizzying heights. It could even be finished in 2025. And so the race is on for the One to reach supertall status first. But who knows when it's going to be finished and ready to be lived in? Senior lenders want to wash their hands of the failing build, looking to sell for nothing less than $1.2 billion. The trouble is, estimates reported by the Toronto Star currently put it at half that value. The Star is also reporting that tenancy contracts could be torn up so the apartments can be sold at higher rates. Even if that does recoup some investment, anyone who takes on the One will have to go about finding a lead retail tenant. Apple was due to move in, taking 9,000 square feet of space on the ground floor. But because of the ongoing delays, the tech megagiant pulled out, leaving a gaping hole in the floor plan. Of course, for any of this to matter, construction of the skyscraper actually needs to be finished.
The last time I went by there, which was days ago, the construction seemed to be underway. Now, I didn't stop and take a really close look, but it's too big a project and too important a neighborhood to let it just sit there. Although we've done that before, but I think it will eventually get done.
One thing's for certain, in the next 2 years, Canada will have its first supertall skyscraper. We just don't know which one it's going to be. The One has faced billions of dollars of debt, receivership, a change of management, and mounting delays. Who will end up living and working here still isn't entirely clear. Only time will tell if the one ever manages to fulfill its destiny and become Canada's first Supertall Skyscraper. Don't forget that we're inspiring the next generation of builders through our investment into BrickBorrow, a fantastic LEGO subscription service. You can learn more and get started today over at brickborrow.com. And as always guys, if you enjoyed this video and you want to get more from the definitive video channel for construction, make sure you're subscribed to the B1M.